Hello, everybody, and we're back here for the final Have Your Say session. So I'm just going to try and bring up to the stage our two moderators for this session. So for those of you out there who haven't been part of a Have Your Say session before, this is your opportunity to get involved. So in a second, we'll hopefully be joined by our two moderators, Elizabeth and Kirill, who are going to be then introducing each of you and giving all of you the opportunity to come up live onto the stage and to give your thoughts on the proceedings and any key conclusions or any key outcomes that you have from the event itself. So I said, hopefully Kirill and Elizabeth will be joining me shortly. They don't seem to have come up yet. So what I'm going to start to do is, whilst we're waiting for them, is maybe start. I can see some of you are in the queue already. So please do, for anyone else who wants to be brought up, please do click the button to request to bring your audio and video live, and you will come up on the screen alongside me, just as Kirill has now. So Kirill, welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. It's an absolute pleasure to co-moderate this Have Your Say session alongside Elizabeth. I guess Elizabeth will probably join in a second. Just a quick introduction on my side for those of you that didn't have the opportunity to see the sessions earlier today. My name is Kirill Minchev, and I'm a manager at Eaton Consulting. And with me, I have Elizabeth, which I'm hoping to join in a moment. Elizabeth was moderating session 8, continuing the path towards a harmonized 5G strategy, and now was moderating the last session. Where should the priorities lie for regulators in bringing spectrum to the market? I think, as Dan said, the idea of this Have Your Say session is to allow the representatives to give their thoughts of any aspect that has been discussed in the past 2 days. I'm hoping that this session will be relatively informal, and I think you have asked your share audio and video button on your screen. In order to have time to hear as many people as possible, I would like to ask everyone to kind of limit their contributions to a maximum of 2-3 minutes. So I guess we start. I'm not sure if when Elizabeth will have the chance to join. Sabrina, I think you were first.
And can I just, I'm going to drop out now, but can I just say, when you're not speaking, if I could ask all of our speakers when you're not speaking to please be on mute, just to stop the background noise. So if everybody who's not speaking, who is up on screen, could go on to mute until you're introduced to speak. So that's great. And Kirill, I can see that Elizabeth has joined us now. So welcome, Elizabeth. So I'll pass over to the two of you. We have people waiting in the queue to be brought up, so we'll do that shortly. But in the meantime, over to you all. So looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Kirill and everybody. So yes, can we start with the first speaker, Xaverin? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, or maybe good morning, I don't know. It's really a privilege to be on this platform again. I was in Botswana, I enjoyed it, and now this was very, very interesting session. And I was privileged to be part of it, even if it's online. It has been really a very successful event, very inspiring. But as a consumer, and as I did in Botswana, I will speak as a consumer in the Sub-Saharan Africa. So I have worries and fears that maybe you might want to address. I'm wondering if really the 5G, I will talk about the 5G, which is really the technology that everyone is going to really envy. We, as the consumers, we are wondering if it's not going to be a privilege for the cities, not ever to reach the rural communities. And we know that Sub-Saharan Africa, I don't know the percent, but it can be up to more than 60%. Maybe we are living in the rural. So is anything really going to be done for those communities? And the second worry is the cost of data, because studies have shown that it can cost up to 18% of your income. So with 5G, is it going to cost maybe 50% of our income, or something is going to be done. My third worry is this going to reach the schools and the universities. The gap was really shown during the COVID-19, when even in South Africa, which is really advanced, more than 50% or 60% kids couldn't access the studies online, or even they tried the TV, they tried the radio, but still the majority of students and the university kids couldn't really access the internet. So I was also having a worry on safety and security, which is the key in Sub-Saharan Africa. We know about the cyber criminality and the fraud and stuff like that. Maybe with the 5G, the criminals are going to be more active, and we are going to be more victims. Is anything really going to be done about that? Those are my worries, but my hopes. I also have hopes and expectations that infrastructure has really be given a priority for the consumers in Sub-Saharan Africa. In the closing remarks, I remember Mr. Andrew was talking about like commuters on trains or public transport or things like that. Can really something be done so that there can be more access to the for the consumer? And I have another hope that with the 5G, we will have a possibility to upgrade our devices, because I wonder if we will have to buy new devices, or if we will throw our old devices in the dustbin. So that's my worry or my hope, that you can really address that. And the other thing is maintenance. Is somebody thinking about maintenance of those devices, or once there is a glitch, we will just throw the device away? Because Sub-Saharan Africa, I still believe it's really a particular, or I don't know how to describe it. It's really so different from the rest of the world. So it really needs a particular a particular attention from the government, from the service providers, from the businesses. I always call for collaboration between those people so that you can serve the consumer, not to just do business or make profit, but work together to serve the consumer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. Just kind of on my side to answer some of the questions that you kind of had on the urban versus rural. Yes, I agree with you. That's a real concern. The implementation costs of 5G are very high, and it's absolute reality that only urban is going to be kind of implemented in the first place. That has been happening even in developed countries. We'll see in the very long term what the situation is going to be, but for sure the initial implementation is going to be in urban. In terms of the costs of 5G, of course it's very early to kind of make a real conclusion. This there not have been much data, but for example, from Korea, the data we've seen, there hasn't been a significant increase in the cost per gigabyte, and actually I think it has been even the same level or even lower level than 4G. So in terms of the costs, of course, it's too early to say, but I don't think it's going to be 50% more expensive than 4G. Thank you very much. I think it's important to move on. I think next was Bashir.
Bashir Gwandu, please. You're on mute. You're on mute, Bashir. Please unmute yourself.
I think Bashir was removed from the line because there was too much noise at his end.
No.
So he'll be coming back.
It's not me.
Gwandu.
This is Gwandu speaking, not Bashir.
Oh, Bashir,
Patel.
I'm sorry. I thought it was Bashir Patel. I'm so sorry. Go on, Bashir. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Look, I think we've made a lot of progress. From my points, is that after this long discussion over the last few days, we've made a lot of progress from where we are, even as ATU. I mean, when we started, I remember Shiv giving us a lot of commendation on how we have moved from really very inactive group to now what we are. I could recall 2006, when we started, there was practically no meeting of ATU at the time. And when we were going to the conference in 2007, I called Akosi, and they said, like, we can't sit down, like, we're gonna have to do something about it. And then we started organizing ourselves with colleagues, I'm sure Liz will remember, and Obama and others that are there. We organized ourselves, and we started. And ATU started coming together. And later on, we have election, we have Sumaila, and things have changed from there onwards. Now, with respect to the work on Spectrum, I think from that work we've done in 2006, 2007, when we got 800 megahertz allocation, and we of course started to protect C-band because we didn't have fiber around Africa. We did that very well. I think it's a huge achievement at the time. When we went back home, we had fiber. We made some progress. Therefore, Spectrum decisions has to change. And by 2012, we already have different view about what we require from the conference. We targeted certain spectrum bands. We were able to get some bands, 700 and a few other bands. But from 2006, we did, I believe, we had 2.3 also. We have 800, and then 2007, like you don't know what we've done. But last conference, it's been affects. We have got many more bands that we really have achieved before. I mean, we've got more bands than any other conference allocated for broadband services. Now, what really strikes me is the that I've seen from Ericsson report, which projects Africa as having a very small percentage growth, even as far as 2025. Now, that really gave me a lot of concern in the sense that it's going Africa to have very minute change on the 5G in comparison to, say, Europe, North America, and even Asia. I mean, why must we remain there? Why do we have to sit down and allow such projection to be reality? Why can't we change the situation by our decisions of today? You know, there are bands that we can have. It's actually, it can become a huge concern to say that, oh, Africa will have to crawl all through the other old technologies that, if you like, had been there for us to get to where can't we leapfrog? We're practical to do so. Why can't we change the whole thing so that, just like we have done on the WRC matters, where Africa came from zero level, if you like, with no voice, and suddenly we are among the leading voice. Why can't we do the same with respect to getting the spectrum? We are leading in most cases in getting the spectrum allocated. Why can't we translate that to operations on the ground, getting use of that spectrum? Instead of just going to debate at the ITU, coming back home, get allocated, and then suddenly we don't do nothing about it.
Excellent.
It's time we change that from getting the allocation, getting the service to the people. That is, I think, what I think is missing in the link. And that's where our effort should be as Africa. We have already done on the international front harmonization. We are all at the forefront of this, from, if you like, doing nothing about it in 2006 when we started. I mean, but I must also really thank the vision of few people. I think this conference will not do justice to itself if we don't mention the effort of people like Amar Badawi. He has really given us a lot of support behind the scene. Paris Michele, John Nkrumah, Mr. Rugunda of Uganda. All of these people work with us behind the scene and the people on the ground like Azuz, Liz working behind the scenes to support us, importantly also there's Sire, Muhammad. All of these people have worked so hard to get us to where, in fact, another person, Botswana. All this nation that have worked hard to get Africa to where it is, I think we should continue to do more to practicalize it on the ground. Thank you.
Sorry for coming in, but yes, absolutely great points. And having worked with you, yes, for years and years, that's great. I want to see if we can give the floor to one speaker who has not taken the floor at all throughout the 3-4 days that we had, and ask Mr. Ardito, or am I? Is it queued that way? I'm seeing that there's one person who hasn't had a chance to speak. If you could make your remarks.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. And I actually happen to be working for Digital Europe as well as Qualcomm. I'm the chairman of the Digital Europe Spectrum Group, and I must say that this conference was really a really great conference, and it was very good also to hear the progress, but also at the same time some of the more bottlenecks in making available spectrum and deploying services for 5G in Africa. Africa has a variety of countries, of course, and to some extent, it is similar from that point of view to Europe, and some of the hurdles we had in Europe are similar to what Africa is experiencing. So probably from this point of view, looking at the European experience of the 5G action plan could actually be useful to consider with the identification of not only the pioneering bands in the low, mid, and high spectrum to focus actually the efforts of the continent, but also, the follow-up actions in terms of, deploying and incentivizing the deployment of networks, and not only basically in the cities, but also in rural areas. So I wanted to make some remarks, and to some extent also some other colleagues have said about the importance of harmonization. And of course, this is important, has been important. Europe with 48 countries is going to be important, probably also in Africa, but looking also at the national specificity, and that could be looked at with the different or tailored licensing models for the different bands. And my other remark probably is regarding the mix of bands. So far it's true that in Europe, but also probably in Africa, the 700 and the 3.5 gigahertz were the one which more utilized and invested on by the mobile network operator, but we are seeing in Europe a lot of very good news coming on 26 gigahertz with services which are being deployed in Italy, in Russia, very soon in Finland, and with more countries coming on board. We are expecting very soon Germany and smaller countries also in Eastern Europe. So this means that the ball is rolling, and Europe will have a combination of the three bands, which other countries like Japan have already recognized. So the importance of millimeter wave to have a truly 5G services is going to be important, and we believe that Africa should not miss that boat, and also authorize at the same time all the three bands, because 5G, truly 5G, really need low, mid, and high bands. And 2020 for us is really the year of 5G, and we believe also for Africa will be starting the year of 5G, and Africa will be at the same level playing field, with all the other continents following this kind of approach. So that are really just my remarks, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luigi. Very, very interesting remarks. I think I agree with most of them. Next we have, I think, Cesar Gutierrez was next in line. Cesar, over to you.
Okay, thank you. That you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
Thank you. Because the other day I had problems with this. So thanks. So I agree with that. Has been a fantastic conference. We have heard quite interesting and provocative ideas from many people. So I'd like to make a few final remarks on the subject of 5G, which was the theme of today. And I think one of the things that I want to highlight is the question of what is actually 5G. So I think that if we listen to what we have, if we listen to the various speakers of this week, we see that it would look like every service in the radio regulations is now 5G. So I think we heard it from the satellite community. So we have heard about the working 3GPP on reusing the radio interface for satellite services. We also heard it from Bienvenue as well with regards to Wi-Fi. So I mean, if we go on this way, I think next year we're going to hear from the terrestrial broadcasters also to call their service 5G. So I think it is. I think this is. It would be useful to focus a bit the discussion and think about what we all understand by 5G, and at least from my perspective, the view of Huawei, what we're talking about here is IMT 2020. So there is nowhere where 5G is defined, but there is a place where IMT 2020 is being defined. So for us, it is quite clear that when we talk about 5G, we're talking about the IMT 2020 technologies. So 5G is what comes after 4G. 4G is a mobile technology, is LTE as defined by 3GPP. 5G is going to be 3GPP new radio. So to us, that is Bienvenue, but I don't necessarily agree with you when you say that Wi-Fi is 5G. It's a mobile service. But it's radio lands. It's not IMT. And on the same basis, I don't think that when we talk about 5G, we should be considering the satellite component. So again, I think it's useful to focus on what is IMT 2020. So this might be a trivial point, but I think it matters because the discussion gets very muddied with all this. The policies and the frequencies that you would consider to facilitate 5G, as in IMT 2020 5G, are going to be very different to what you need to facilitate take-up of Wi-Fi or take-up of fixed satellite service or mobile satellite service. So I think it's important to separate these different services and to consider the needs of the services separately. I think we can have a grown-up discussion about what is needed to facilitate Wi-Fi without having to put the 5G tag name in front of it. And the same would apply for the satellite. So, what do we think that are the policies and frequencies that would facilitate IMT 2020 in Africa? So I think we have heard it from various people that we need large channels if we're going to make the best use of the technology, and we're going to make it an efficient use of the technology. And we have also heard that we need bands, we need those large channels in bands that are global bands that have the highest support from both handsets and networks. So that is what we've been proposing, and that regulators consider the C-band and large channels in the C-band. So, my final remark would be to just a plea to administrations and regulators to remember which is the service that is predominantly used in the continent to provide broadband, and that is the mobile. That's the mobile service. Those are the mobile networks. We heard it from Mr. Bodian from Senegal. He gave the numbers, and if I remember correctly, it's about 80% of broadband in Senegal is through mobile networks. I think that pretty much represents what happens in the rest of the continent. So let's not forget about that, and let's make sure that this service, the mobile service, can continue to provide broadband to the African citizens. And let's make sure that the policies and the spectrum policy continues to facilitate that. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you to all, and thanks for organizing this day today, in particular on 5G, which was certainly very, very interesting.
Thanks, Cesar. And our next speaker is Bashir Patel. So,
sorry, Elizabeth.
Yep.
Or we move. I think Mr. Benvenue, I'm not sure if you're pronouncing it right, wanted to say something to comment on this.
Yeah, just a slight comment because I mean, what Cesar was saying, that was not the vision that I was explaining in my presentation. Because when we say 5G is 5G IMT 2020, and that is clearly stated. But the second piece is because the amount of offload is going to increase to 71% by 2023. Therefore, you need additional Wi-Fi spectrum to complement that. So I think that's that's a kind of a clear differentiation on saying Wi-Fi. We are saying Wi-Fi 6E is 5G. That's not the idea. That's the comment I want to make before my final intervention.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think we can move now. It's Mr. Bashir Patel. I don't think we can see him, but let's see if we can hear him. Bashir, can you hear us? I think probably we have a issue there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You can hear me now. Okay, it's my headphone. First and foremost, let me thank the conference organizers and all the participants, presenters and panelists and everybody else who participated. I think it's been a wonderful 4 days. Certainly 4 days which provided very interesting insights into some of the key issues that face the continent. It certainly has enlightened me in a number of issues that are prevalent throughout the continent, and also how the countries, the regulators, and administrations, as well as operators, have faced the issues that we're all facing. But what I want to do, Elizabeth, if I may, very quickly run through the 4 days from my perspective in terms of providing you with key highlights. The day one, which started with taking stock with John Omo and Mario and impact of COVID-19, that really did set the scene for all of us as an ICT industry as a whole, as an ecosystem we have. It brought to light that when we have a particular pandemic kind of situation where we all get together very, very quickly, everybody concentrated, operators, MNOs, satellite operators, ISPs, regulators got together and said, look, what can we do? How can we help? How can we do things? And I think that's a wonderful thing as a community, as a human race, that we get together in times of crisis. And that one of the things that reflected is over the last 4 or 5 months, we're all been in a lockdown mode. And we've seen this in data traffic. Various countries had different kinds of periods of lockdown. But the poll, which we did as a survey on the conference, said 80% respondent declared that there was an urgency now in tackling the digital divide. And that's a good thing, because I think it's bringing to light the governments to recognize that ICT is phenomenally important given these kind of crises. And within that, there was over 90% said network coverage was very important, and speed and capacity. So that is also very important to note from that. And then we moved on from there onto looking at the path towards WRC 23. And again, here we looked at the key bands for IMT 2020. I'm not going to say 5G, but I'll say IMT 2020. And the rollout for these bands. I think, we looked at the UHF and 470 to 694 megahertz. 60% of that band is utilized by TV broadcasters. I think there may be a subset that might be possible. But I think that needs to be looked at very, very carefully with the broadcast industry. I think it's got to be a win-win situation for everybody here, and we shouldn't be trying to knock down. There is a digital dividend there, and it needs to be looked at. But as I say, this has to be carefully looked at. Need to strengthen the 3G, 4G networks with coverage. We don't have much of that in Africa. I've been all over Africa. As you know, when I was the Commonwealth Telecom Organization Chief Operating Officer, I spent 6 months in Nigeria, all over Nigeria. So when I hear statements like 90% is covered, I really do beg the question how true that is. We do need to
Bashir, just indulge me 1 minute. Sorry, Bashir, indulge me just a moment. I'm hearing that we have 10 more minutes for this session, so I just wanted to let you know that
very quickly. Moving on from there, on the path to WRC20, we then covered a session on coverage connectivity to communities everywhere. And again, we had the financial data with universal service, for almost $500 million every year is there, but we don't spend. Only what, 54% is actually spent. So half of that is spent by universal service providers. So again, we need to look at that, how best we can effectively use that. I think, again, the sub-regions, GAICO, ECOWAS, SADC have some interesting strategies in place on policy and regulation. But coming on to today, the 5G ecosystem, rather than IMT 2020, the 5G ecosystem, there's a huge potential in Africa, okay? But there's a huge implementation problem in Africa. We've got 55 countries, Cape to Cairo, as Baxton mentioned. 1 billion people today, 1.5 billion people in 2025 is the forecast. So how are we going to harmonize these 55 countries? There's some severe challenges that we have. Fiber backbone, cost of investing in the IMT 2020 5G networks, devices and affordability. I mean, when you look at the population, the rural population of Africa, we need to seriously ask the questions. They don't have 3G yet, some of them. They don't even have 4G yet. So 5G, yes, it will happen, but it won't happen now. It's got to be built into it. We need to develop that infrastructure. And I think the home I want to finally conclude on very quickly in a minute is the tools for allocation of spectrum. Spectrum refarming from low to medium bands. You know, I just saw earlier from one of the presentations that WiMAX is used extensively. Well, you had an allocation for WiMAX extensively in Africa. That is not utilized anymore. Why don't we reform those bands? We don't need to get into 3.6 to 3.8. So we need to really seriously be very pragmatic in our approach throughout the continent with all the regulators looking carefully and reassigning, looking at the newer technology, looking at the pricing on the spectrum side of things, the coverage obligation, and so on. So all of these aspects need to be borne in mind, and we need to be very pragmatic about this.
Yeah, thanks, Bashir. I'm gonna have to.
My final.
Please, if you don't mind, because we have like 6 people in the queue, and if we can have the next person come up, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
I think, unfortunately, he dropped out. So I think anyway, we can go to Shiv. I think you're next on the line.
Hi, Kirill. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Ethan, Benvenu, everybody. I think part of what Bashir was saying was actually correct. And I mean Bashir Patel, that this was a very satisfying conference to participate in because the discussion moved beyond merely and purely talking about spectrum to connecting that business of spectrum to reality. What needs to happen, and that reality became so in policy arenas and so on and so forth, and that reality got brought home and thrown into greater relief because of COVID, which of course brought to the front issues such as the digital divide, issues such as the need for network coverage and connectivity and capacity and so on and so forth, as we saw the shift in the last 6 months from merely connecting the high-end offices in downtowns to moving it to homes and schools and everything else. So this was a very good conference for that reason. I want to sort of go back to Bashir Gwandu also, and the reason I had the confusion is when I look at Bashir Gwandu, I think of him as Dr. Gwandu, And when I look at Bashir Patel, I think of him as my brother Bashir. So that is where my confusion was. So forgive me for that. But Bashir Gwandu is absolutely right that in the last 2 cycles, particularly, there has been a remarkable change in the way African and, if I may add, the Arab world has become such a vocal and potent force in the global spectrum management circles. I remember when I joined Ericsson in 2012, and very early 2012, and started to go to Africa, the only person that I could think of from the industry that was actually actively working with policymakers was my sister Elizabeth. Remember Elizabeth? And now, of course, we are blessed to have others who are also engaged in it, and we now have a GSA and so on and so forth. But Elizabeth and I, when at least in my memory, were the first and the second person. And by the way, she continues to be the chair of GSA, and I was her vice chair. And I never ever give up the chance to say that I might have been her only known vice, but that's a different story altogether. All right. So, so it's
have a
very
minute,
important.
You have 1 more minute.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very important to understand that we have moved very fast to see Africa and the Arab world emerge. But the other fact is also true that while there has been a lot of identification done, the time lag between identification and actual allocation and making the spectrum available to players has been sadly lacking. Bashir Gwandu talked about the Ericsson Mobility Report and the rather slim pickings it had for 5G in Africa. So I talked to the actual authors, and this is important to understand what happens. They looked at the level of 3 and 4G deployment in Africa, which are foundational to deriving the benefits from 5G. And they kind of said that if that act is not together, the diffusion of 5G is going to be a little bit of a challenge, and the adoption of it. And they were also looking at 2 or 3 or 4 collapsed auctions that took place last year and did not work out, from Mozambique to Senegal, where we had these challenges. So the issues that were discussed on how do we do spectrum pricing, how do we do spectrum auction, et cetera, are also very, very important. Lastly, before I conclude, I would like to sort of make one point. The tremendous effort that Forum Global put together in bringing this organizing this conference is, I mean, I haven't seen something done so well in a very long time, right? And I attend the ITU events just like everybody else. But what it highlighted is also the tremendous role that communication networks and connectivity play in sort of keeping the dialogue going, which my friend Elizabeth keeps saying, let the dialogue continue, right? And it's such a validation of these technologies for continued dialogue across the world. Thank you. I'll conclude with that.
Thank you very much, Shiv. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I think just quickly, if we can hear Eaton, if that's okay with you, being you given that we already heard you, just kind of quickly, and we see that we have time. After that, Eaton, over to you, just very quickly if you can.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it was a fantastic conference, and then I mean it elevate the discussions to a higher level, especially when we talk about 5G strategy for the whole continent. Now, the question that comes often is like, well, you know, in Africa you have 2G, 3G, 4G, and then so 5G, it is not, you know, necessary currently. But I think on the panel and during my presentation, I was talking about business opportunities that are for 5G on the continent. That's real. And for that to be harnessed, then a number of regulatory conditions need to be in place. And now is actually the time for regulators on the continent to start, I mean, to have some action on the ground. For example, in terms of updating the digital economy strategies, for example, updating the regulation to incorporate or modernize the regulation to incorporate new technological development. But also, in terms of spectrum, there's a need to have a mix of low band, mid band, and high band spectrum. That's for 5G IMT 2020. But at the same time, there's a need to have spectrum for license exam that will facilitate the use of 5G IMT 2020. And other two aspects that are very important that came up is the need to have infrastructure in place. That's need to be deployed to facilitate 5G. And finally, where I will stop is the use cases. What are the use cases that will be relevant for the continent, right? Say, for example, if it will be fixed wireless broadband, or if it will be in the education sector, or if it will be in the agriculture sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we have lastly a little bit of time for Eaton. Eaton, over to you. I think you're on mute.
Okay, how about that? Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, sorry for that. Yes, thank you for giving me the time to speak. I appreciate that there isn't much time left, so I won't repeat what has been said by so many speakers before me about how great this conference was. So congratulations and thank you for that. I just want to go back on a couple of things specifically that were discussed today and that are important to the satellite community. We heard a lot about the harmonization of generally speaking, and the harmonization of spectrum specifically. And I was very glad to hear so many people agreeing with that. We've often said that the harmonization should be done at the widest level, at least at a regional level if it can't be global. And so seeing the wide support for harmonization in sub-Saharan Africa was very, very encouraging. It's, as we've said many times, this is essential for assuring investment in, for example, future satellite infrastructure, which depends on a stable and a harmonized regular spectrum landscape to attract the investment. And that brings me to my second point very rapidly. And the observation, as we all know very well, that an overwhelming majority of the internet connectivity in the region is mobile. I hadn't even realized that the number was even as high as it was. But I just want to make it very clear. We have a project, others have similar projects. Eutelsat has the Connect Africa project. It's already in the transfer orbit, and it's a dedicated satellite connectivity for Africa. And it will provide the widespread connectivity that people are using. One of the major ways of providing this is by facilitating Wi-Fi hotspots. We've heard that others are doing Wi-Fi. It could be other local wireless networks. I'm not going to get into the definitions as to what is what, but it is mobile. Consistent for the end user, it's mobile, the connectivity. So it's consistent with end users continuing to have mobile as their access to internet. So there's no contradiction there. I won't go into is debate. It's not over. I'll be glad to hear what it is, and we'll be glad to be part of it. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Eaton. Elizabeth, I thought this was a very good discussion. I'm not sure if you want to add something, or we can pass over to Dan for his closing remarks.
Dan for his closing remarks. Thanks.
Well, look, thank you, Elizabeth, Kirill. Thank you both so much, and I think we got through a good number of people there. I think definitely some differing comments, but that's what it's all about. You know, I think if everyone agrees, then there's no reason to have a conference, I suppose. So, but thank you both very much for that, and thank you both as well for the sessions that that you ran earlier today. I think we had some really, really good discussions today. So thank you both. So that's just about it. We've had 4 packed days, and hopefully you'll agree we've had some really interesting discussions across a wide range of different bands and different topics. And I hope that all of you out there were able to take advantage of the interactive areas of the platform as well. So we have the exhibition area and the various stands that are available there, and also the one-to-one networking area that was available. And I know that there were quite a few, I think about 80 of you made new connections we've seen using that networking area, so that's fantastic. And for a quick note on that, you will be receiving an email tomorrow with the detail of all those new connections that you made to allow you to follow up with those people after the event. So to finish up, I just wanted to mention a few thank yous to some of the organizations and individuals who are involved in the event and who have made this event possible. So first of all, I wanted to thank again all of our sponsors and partners for the support of the event, and particularly our partners ITU, ATU, and our host and our virtual hosts here, ICTA in Mauritius. As I mentioned, and as the chairman mentioned as well at the start of the event, we really hope that the global situation is improved by this time next year, and we're able to revisit our plans to bring this conference to Mauritius in person. A huge thank you as well to all of our speakers, panelists, and moderators across the 9 plenary sessions and 9 showcase sessions that we've had at this event. We really have had some excellent discussions, as I've said, and thankfully, just as importantly, only very few technical issues. So we really appreciate all of your involvement and your time, both at the event itself, but also in the build-up through the various technical rehearsals that we put you all through to make sure that that things run smoothly on the day. So thank you all very much. A big thank you as well to all of you out there who have participated at the event, both via the event platform itself, and also those of you who have been watching and are still watching on Twitter or YouTube. I think we had more than 800 people in total participating across the various sessions, which we're really, really happy with. And I think, you know, that compares to maybe around the 250 people that we would expect to have this was held face to face. And I think that is one of the advantages that you get with the virtual event, that you do enable a lot wider level of participation for people. So thank you all for your participation, and thank you to everyone who got involved, particularly those of you who actively participated in the discussions via the chat room, and also in the Have Your Say session that we had here and that we had on day 2 of the conference. So all of your contributions have been a big part of the event and given us a truly interactive discussion during each of the sessions. So thank you very much. And finally, as ever, I'd like to say my last thank you to my fantastic colleagues here in the Spectrum team at Forum Global. So whilst I think all of us are now getting used to this virtual event format, the work to put these conferences together doesn't get any less, and there really is a huge effort taking place behind the scenes to pull everything together, and it involves lots of late nights and lots of early mornings. So once again, the whole team here has done a fantastic job. So James, Kate, Lula, and Jordan, thank you again to all of you for everything and all of your work to make this event what it was. And just to finish up, I wanted to have a shameless plug for some of our upcoming events that we have coming up in different regions, or focusing on different regions, because they all will pretty much be taking place virtually. So our next event as part of the Global Spectrum series is the Americas Conference, the Americas Spectrum Management Conference. That's going to be on the 12th to the 16th of October. We then have the Latin America edition of the conference, which will be the 10th to the 13th of November. And finally, we have the CIS edition of the conference. Now, that's the only one that we haven't yet made the decision to switch to a fully virtual format. So we're still trying to work out whether we're able to do some elements of a hybrid event there, but that one will take place in December, and the final details on that will be confirmed shortly. So with that, thank you again to everyone for your participation. Thank you to Kirill, thank you to Elizabeth, and stay safe, everybody. Look after yourselves, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you.